Welcome once again to another episode of Tired Old Queen at the Movies. Don't forget about our great movie merchandise listed below. You can follow us on Blue Sky and on X. And now for a really fun Halloween movie, let's go see the Tired Old Queen at the Movies, Steve Hayes.
Ooh, Johnny, it's Halloween! And this year for Halloween, we're going back to the 1950s Universal Monster Collection. 1958's Monster on the Campus, starring Edward Franz, Joanna Moore, Troy Donahue. Now, this was a movie directed by Jack Arnold, who was the major director at Universal in the 50s. He directed all their classic sci-fi movies, Creature from the Black Lagoon, Revenge of the Creature, It Came from Outer Space, The Incredible Shrinking Man, Tarantula, I used to love that, Tarantula, and also this movie, Monster on the Campus. Okay, the plot of this is this. This professor brings back this coelacanth. Now, the coelacanth is this fish that goes back to prehistoric times. He teaches at this university, and he gets the science department to bring this dead coelacanth in.
What a ugly-looking creature.
Yeah, it's a close relative of our ancestors.
So they bring the thing in, and Troy Donahue, who's one of the students, Troy Donahue's one of the students, he has this dog, and when they're unloading the dead fish to take it into the science department, it leaks blood, and the German Shepherd drinks the blood. Well, it's always been friendly. 5 seconds later, it has these enormous fangs, and it's biting everybody. It's tearing into people, and he has to fight it down, and they can't understand what happened.
Don't you know me, Saxon?
This secretary comes over to deliver some papers from this other professor. The professor goes to put the fish into the refrigerator to keep it from spoiling because it's already been dead for a while. And the jaws clamp down on his hand and breaks the skin and bites him.
First time I was ever bitten by a fossil.
And he's dizzy and he's collapsing. So she drives him back to his apartment, and she rushes in to call the police because she can't get him out of the car, so she wants to get an ambulance. And suddenly, around the door comes this hand, this gigantic hand, and she turns around and his girlfriend, who he's supposed to be taking to the dance, he never shows up. So she goes to his apartment, and when she walks into the professor's apartment, it's completely ransacked. He's passed out on the lawn, and the girl is hanging from her hair dead. So the police get called. Naturally, he's the first one suspected of the murder. But then they find these giant handprints all over the place, these humongous hands. So they know it's not him.
All I know is Blake hasn't got a hand like that.
So they're looking for this sort of giant monster psychopath. So the next day, the whole college is in an uproar because this woman has been killed. And the police are worried about him because they think somebody targeted him and that they got the woman by mistake. So somebody's after the professor, so they leave a policeman with him.
Molly wasn't badly injured at all. A few minor cuts and bruises. What killed her was heart failure. In other words, she died of fright.
He pulls out the dead fish again, and while they're talking, this little dragonfly lands on it. And, is eating. And they wish the dragonfly away, and Troy Donahue comes back with his girlfriend to get his dog, who miraculously is better the next day. No sign of fangs or anything else. And poof, poof, poof at the window. They open a window, and this gigantic dragonfly flies in. And they lure it down. It lands on the fish again, and he takes this spike, and the professor stabs the dragonfly and kills it. So when he picks up the dragonfly to look at it, blood from the dragonfly goes into his pipe. Okay? So he puts the fish away. He sits down to make notes. I'm going to make notes. I can't believe I've never seen a dragonfly this big. And he starts smoking his pipe. When he's making notes, he's smoking his pipe. And all of a sudden, they take his point of view. And the dragonfly gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and goes back very, very tiny again. And all of a sudden you hear him go, but you don't know what's going on, and you hear, right? The policeman who's sent to guard him hears all this commotion inside the lab, runs inside, and the lab has been torn to pieces, just like Professor's house was the night before. And he goes up and he's looking for it. And he doesn't see it, so he decides to call the cops. And you see the shadow coming up behind them, and the guy turns around and, And nobody can figure out what's going on. Of course, you know what's going on. You know, you're kind of getting the idea. The professor goes back and he starts doing some research, and he pulls in one of his other professors, and the other professors think that he's just crazy and maybe you need a rest. This is what they all do at all these sites. So, you know, doctor, I think you need a rest. No, I'm telling you, something's crazy. Something really prehistoric and horrible is happening here. This is a prehistoric man. This dragonfly got so big in the dog. Why wouldn't it? What if it happened to a man? What if it? He looks at his pipe. He starts putting 2 and 6 together.
Isn't actually this whole thing very improbable?
Only as improbable as life itself.
So he drives up to this cabin in the mountains, and he has his microphone, and he has the tape recorder, and he has this camera set up. And he says, I'm going to inject myself now with coelacanth blood and see if it has any connection. So, you know, they always do, you know, these scientists, they always, you know. And he sits there, and then listen. And of course, he's the monster, right? So his girlfriend follows him up because she knows he's gone up to this cabin in the woods, and she's about to run into something she's not prepared for. And that's where I'm going to end it. Typical of Universal this time. It's real schlock value, but it's really, they're campy and wonderful. Really take these sincerely. All the actors act like this is really, really happening. Arthur Franz, who plays the professor, he was in all these movies playing B parts in bigger movies, and he would get like scientists and things like this in B pictures. But he was really a good actor, and he did a lot of TV, a lot of Perry Masons, a lot of the Western shows in the 50s. Joanna Moore, who was the female lead in this movie, is the mother of Tatum O'Neal. She was married to Ryan O'Neal, and she was this sort of willowy blonde. She had sort of this way of talking, and she's sort of very, very practical. Donald, what's the matter, Donald? She's very, very, very practical.
Well, thank you very much for telling me.
And Hitchcock took a liking to her around the same time that he had that fracas with Vera Miles, and that relationship ended. And he signed her to a contract, and she appeared in several Alfred Hitchcock things, and he wanted to groom her, but she wasn't having it. She didn't want to do the makeover. She thought it was ridiculous. So he lost interest in her and went on to do Psycho. Troy Donahue, of the completely immobile face, was a beautiful client of Henry Wilson's. He was in Tarnished Angels. He had small roles and stuff. And, you know, Troy Donahue never changed his expression. He would go, Doctor, I'm terrified. I can't imagine what's going on here. I really can't. Doctor, it's very hot outside. You know.
Wait a minute.
He sort of acts like a 70s porno star, you know. Geez, Mr. George, you know, your towel's open. Oh, well, I guess I'll take my shirt off, you know.
What did you say it sounds like?
So anyway, he was in this, and then he got signed, and he made A Summer Place. And A Summer Place made him a big star with Sandra Dee. And he made sort of these teenage movies like Parish and Rome Adventure, and he married Suzanne Plachette, and then his career kind of went out nowhere. And they resurrected him because he was friends with Francis Ford Coppola, so he got a part in Godfather 2. And then Cry Baby, you know, John Waters' Cry Baby, he had a part in that. And then his career petered out and passed away. But he was pretty. There's no question. He was pretty.
That's why we had to tell someone.
This movie is fast. It goes by like nobody's business, but it has that wonderful 50s horror thing going on with it. The 50s, they loved monsters, especially prehistoric, giant spiders and things like that. And I just love them. I grew up with these movies every Friday night and every Saturday afternoon. Monster movie matinee, you know. I lived for these movies, and especially the ones by Universal. For your Halloween enjoyment, you cannot beat Arthur Franz, Joanna Moore, Troy Donahue, and Whit Bissell in Jack Arnold's Monster on the Campus.
Let's all go to the library.
Hairy girls aren't beautiful in the ballet. I was happy, I was pretty hairy in the ballet. That's when I started with Nair. Off the steep and belly Nair. Stop it.